Elvis Presley. He was born in 1935. He died in 1977. But his music, his face, his moves, they never really left us. Not really. Now, think about his 100th birthday. That's coming up soon in 2035. It feels a bit strange to talk about someone's centennial when they've been gone for so long, but people still listen to him. They stream his songs. They watch old movies. They even visit Graceland. And some smart people, futurologists, they have been looking at what Elvis's legacy will mean in 2035. They asked big questions. Can a person really live forever through technology? Well, what does it mean for art and culture when you can bring back the dead, in a way? And if you do, is it still them? These futurology papers, they are not just guessing. They are looking at trends. They are thinking about artificial intelligence, virtual reality, digital rights, and how society is changing. They are wondering if Elvis will be just a historical footnote for future generations, or will he be a constant evolving presence? A new kind of ghost in the machine, maybe? It is a wild thought. But when you look at how much the world has changed since he passed, and how much more it will change in the next decade, it makes you think. Number 12. What is the true measure of a legacy in the 21st century? People used to think a legacy was simple. It was the mark you left behind. Your art, your inventions, your children, things like that. But now, it is all getting a lot more complex, especially for someone like Elvis. His centennial in 2035 forces us to really look at how we define legacy in a digital world. One of the early studies on this from the Cultural Futures Institute, led by Dr. Alistair Finch, really shook things up. It was called Post-Human Celebrity, the Continuous Reinterpretation of Iconography. In Finch's paper, presented back in 2032 at the Global Futurology Summit in Singapore, suggested that an icon's true impact isn't just their original work. It is how they are constantly reinterpreted, repurposed, and even rebuilt by new generations and new technologies. He used Elvis as his primary case study. Finch argued that Elvis's legacy by 2035 won't be a fixed thing. It will be a fluid, ever-changing entity, something that lives in the collective consciousness, but also in algorithms and data streams. This means we don't just consume Elvis's original records anymore, we interact with his image in new ways. We see AI-generated art inspired by him. We might even talk to an AI model trained on his interviews and writings. The paper pointed out that this constant recontextualization means the original Elvis becomes almost like a foundational myth, a starting point for endless variations. Think about it. When a young person in 2035 discovers Elvis, they might first encounter him through a VR experience or a deepfake documentary, not necessarily through a dusty old vinyl record. This makes the legacy less about preservation and more about ongoing creation. Finch's team also looked at the concept of digital memory. They showed that Elvis's digital footprint is one of the largest for any deceased celebrity. Millions of fan pages, countless images, hours of video, reams of text. This massive data set acts as a kind of digital DNA. It allows for advanced AI to reconstruct or simulate aspects of his personality and performance. One of their examples was a project that used machine learning to predict how Elvis might have reacted to a modern pop song. It showed a surprisingly accurate simulation based on his known musical tastes and performance style. This isn't just fan fiction anymore. It is data-driven speculation. The study concluded that the measure of a legacy in the 21st century is its capacity for generative renewal. How much new content, new experiences, and new interpretations can it inspire? And how effectively can technology facilitate this process? For Elvis, this means his legacy isn't just about what he did. It is about what he continues to enable others to do, or what technology allows us to create from him. This flips the traditional idea of legacy on its head. It isn't a tombstone, it is a continuously running program. But then, if everyone has their own Elvis sculpted by algorithms and personal preferences, does the original human Elvis still matter? What do we lose when history becomes so malleable, rewritten by data and AI? And if we can continuously generate new Elvis content, does it dilute the meaning of what he actually created? Number 11, can a digital ghost truly capture a human soul? This is where it gets really unsettling for some people. The idea of digital immortality. For Elvis, this is a major part of the futurology discussion around his centennial. By 2035, the technology for creating hyper-realistic digital avatars is incredibly advanced. We are not just talking about holograms anymore, we are talking about sentient AIs that can interact, learn, and even create. Dr. Lena Hansen, a leading expert in synthetic consciousness at the Institute for Digital Ethics, wrote a powerful piece in 2030 called Echoes of the King's Simulated Personhood and the Ethics of Digital Revival. She explored the moral and philosophical implications of bringing back Elvis as a digital entity. Hansen's work emphasized that while AI can replicate appearance, voice, and even mannerisms, it struggles with the core of human experience. Things like genuine emotion, original thought, and true spontaneity. She argued that a digital Elvis, no matter how advanced, would always be a sophisticated simulation. Not a resurrection. The soul, as she put it, is an emergent property of biological life and complex human interaction, something that cannot be fully replicated in code. She pointed to a famous example from 2028. A tech company launched an Elvis virtual concert experience. It was stunning visually. The voice was perfect, but audience reactions were mixed. Some were thrilled. Others felt an uncanny valley effect. They described it as technically brilliant but emotionally hollow. Like a perfect puppet show, her paper detailed specific challenges. For instance, what about growth? A human learns, changes, evolves over their lifetime. A digital replica, while it can learn from new data, doesn't have the same kind of existential journey. It doesn't age, doesn't suffer loss, doesn't experience the unexpected twists of life that shape a person. Hansen posed a crucial question. If Elvis were alive today, he would be almost 100. He would have lived through so much more history, seen so many changes in music. A digital Elvis, frozen in time from his prime, misses all of that. Does it then become an idealized, but ultimately fake, version of him? The research also touched on the commercial exploitation of these digital ghosts. If you can create an unlimited number of new Elvis songs or performances, who owns them? And what does it do to the value of his original art? Hansen was particularly concerned about the ethical tightrope involved. She warned against treating these digital entities as anything more than highly sophisticated tools. To imbue them with true personhood, she argued, risked trivializing human life and consciousness. She cited the ongoing legal battles concerning the digital rights of deceased celebrities. By 2035, these laws are still evolving, constantly trying to catch up with the rapid pace of technological innovation. One of the fascinating anecdotes in Hansen's paper involved early experiments with AI-generated dialogue. Researchers fed all available interviews and public statements from Elvis into an AI. They then asked the questions if it were Elvis. The results were startlingly coherent. It could maintain his persona, his speech patterns, his specific turns of phrase. But when asked a truly novel philosophical question that he never addressed in life, the AI would either provide a generic answer or try to deflect. It highlighted the limitations it could perfectly mimic, it could not authentically originate. So, if we can build perfect digital replicas, what exactly are we bringing back? Is it a celebration of genius, or just a sophisticated form of entertainment? What does it mean for our understanding of identity when a person's essence can be digitally cloned? And where do we draw the line between homage and exploitation? It's number 10. How will the metaverse redefine the Elvis experience? The metaverse? It's not just a buzzword anymore by 2035. It is a series of interconnected virtual worlds, a place where people live, work, and play. And for Elvis's legacy, it is a huge deal. A major study called The Persistent Presence Elvis in the Omniverse, published by the Metacultural Studies Collective in 2033, explored how virtual and augmented realities would transform the fan experience. The lead author, Dr. Kenji Tanaka, pointed out that the metaverse moves beyond just watching. It is about participation. Tanaka's paper highlighted several key developments. First, virtual Graceland. By 2035, a fully interactive, hyper-realistic digital replica of Graceland exists in multiple metaverses. Visitors can walk through the rooms, see artifacts, and even attend virtual concerts in the Jungle Room. But it is not just a passive tour. The Meta Graceland experience includes interactive elements. You can attend a meet and greet with an AI Elvis. You can take virtual dance lessons where he guides you through his moves. You can even participate in a simulated recording session with him. This allows for an entirely new level of immersion for fans who might never visit the physical Graceland. Second, the paper discussed persistent Elvis avatars. These aren't just one-off performances. These are digital entities that live in the metaverse. They host virtual events, engage with fans, and even collaborate with living artists in real-time virtual concerts. Tanaka cited the success of Elvis the Vegas Resurgence, a meta tour that ran for 2 years, starting in 2031. It featured an AI-powered Elvis performing classic and new songs in a virtual recreation of his famous Las Vegas stage. The audience could join virtually, interact with other fans, and even customize their own avatar's appearance to match different eras of Elvis's style. This show reportedly grossed hundreds of millions, proving the commercial viability of such ventures. The study also looked at how Elvis's music is integrated into the metaverse. Instead of just streaming a song, you might experience a fully immersive music video. One example given was a reimagining of Jailhouse Rock, where users could become a character in the song's virtual prison, dancing alongside the digital Elvis. This changes music consumption from a listening experience to a participatory narrative. Tanaka argued that this shifts Elvis's legacy from being about his past performances to his ongoing role as a facilitator of new experiences. He becomes less of a historical figure and more of a contemporary guide. Another interesting point was the rise of micro-fandoms within the metaverse. Because content can be so highly customized, fans can create their own specific Elvis experiences. A fan obsessed with his 1968 comeback special could immerse themselves solely in that era. Someone else could focus on his early Sun Records period. This fragmentation, Tanaka suggested, allows for deeper, more personalized engagement, but it also raises questions about a shared cultural understanding of Elvis. But if Elvis is constantly performing in a virtual world, does that devalue the uniqueness of his original performances? What happens to the concept of a live, unrepeatable moment? And will future generations even care about the difference between the real and the simulated? Number 9, will Elvis's original music still resonate with new generations? This is a big one. For Elvis to truly endure, his music has to speak to people born decades after he died. A comprehensive meta-analysis of music consumption trends titled The Enduring Cadence Elvis in the Post-Streaming Era was published in 2034 by the Global Music Analytics Consortium. A lead researcher, Dr. Anya Sharma, examined streaming data, social media engagement, and qualitative surveys across various age groups. Her findings were quite telling. Sharma's research showed that while Elvis's overall streaming numbers remain robust, there's a distinct shift in how younger generations engage with his music. They are less likely to listen to full albums. They prefer curated playlists, often where his songs are mixed with contemporary artists. Hits like Can't Help Falling in Love and Jailhouse Rock still perform exceptionally well. But some of his deeper cuts or more genre-specific tracks like gospel recordings see less traction. This isn't unique to Elvis. It reflects broader changes in how young people consume music in general. The paper also highlighted the role of other media in introducing Elvis to new listeners. The Elvis biopic from 2022, for example, had a massive resurgence in popularity in 2030 when a new interactive version was released in the metaverse. This led to a significant spike in streaming for his entire catalog, especially among teenagers who might not have known much about him before. Similarly, Sharma noted that the use of his songs in popular video game soundtracks or viral short-form videos often triggers discovery. Burning Love experienced a massive boost in 2031 after it was featured in a popular AI-generated dance challenge. Sharma's study introduced the concept of cultural anchors. These are songs or artists that become so ingrained in popular culture that they serve as reference points across generations regardless of specific musical trends. Elvis, she argued, has several such anchors. His voice, his charisma, and the distinct sound of early rock and roll are instantly recognizable. Even if a young person doesn't actively seek out Elvis, they encounter his influence everywhere. As modern artists sampling his work, fashion trends inspired by his style, or even just the widespread knowledge of his iconic image. But the research also pointed out a potential vulnerability. While Elvis's hits are strong, the context of his music can be lost. Younger listeners might enjoy Hound Dog, without understanding its blues roots or the cultural impact it had in the 1950s. They might appreciate the song as a catchy tune, but miss its revolutionary power. This raises questions about cultural literacy. Are we just consuming surface-level content, or are we truly understanding the historical significance? Sharma's conclusions suggest that Elvis's music will continue to resonate, but perhaps in a more fragmented and decontextualized way. It will be part of the global soundtrack, but its original meaning might become secondary to its entertainment value in new forms. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, she argued. It's just a different kind of legacy. But if musical heritage becomes divorced from its historical context, what does that mean for our understanding of cultural evolution? Will new generations appreciate Elvis for what he was, or for what algorithms make him? And what happens if the algorithms decide his music is no longer relevant? Number 8, will Graceland remain a physical pilgrimage site or transform into a digital shrine? Graceland, it's more than just a house. For millions, it's a sacred site, a place of pilgrimage. But by 2035, in a world full of virtual experiences, what happens to the physical space? A fascinating report titled "The Holy Ground and the Holographic Haven Graceland in the Age of Digital Imminence" was published in 2034 by the Heritage Futures Foundation. Authored by historical preservationist Dr. Eleanor Vance, it examined the evolving role of physical cultural landmarks. Vance's research indicated that physical visitation to Graceland has actually stabilized, rather than declined, even with the rise of hyper-realistic virtual tours. She argued that the desire for authentic physical connection remains strong for many, especially older generations and those seeking a tangible link to history. The act of walking through his actual home, seeing his real possessions, and standing at his gravesite provides an emotional experience that a digital replica, no matter how good, cannot fully replicate. It's about presence, not just appearance. However, the report also detailed significant upgrades to the physical Graceland experience. By 2035, the estate has integrated sophisticated augmented reality AR elements. The visitors can use AR glasses or their smart devices to overlay historical footage onto the real rooms. You might see a ghost like Elvis performing in the living room, or see animations of his family members moving through the spaces. This blends the physical with the digital, enhancing the experience without completely replacing it. It allows for personalized storytelling, where different visitors can choose different historical narratives to explore. Crucially, Vance's paper also discussed the symbiotic relationship between the physical and digital Graceland. The digital Graceland in the metaverse often acts as a marketing tool, sparking interest that leads to physical visits. Conversely, physical visitors often then explore the digital version to deepen their experience or to share it with others. The two experiences feed into each other, creating a larger, more comprehensive Graceland ecosystem. This multi-platform approach has proven effective in reaching diverse audiences. Vance highlighted the challenge of maintaining authenticity. As the physical site incorporates more digital overlays, there's a risk of overwhelming the original historical context. The paper cited an incident in 2033 where an overly aggressive AR overlay for a Christmas event at Graceland sparked complaints from purist fans who felt it detracted from the solemnity of the actual site. This led to a re-evaluation of how digital enhancements are implemented, prioritizing subtlety and historical accuracy. The report concluded that Graceland will continue to be a vital physical landmark. Its emotional resonance, its history, and its tangible connection to Elvis are irreplaceable. But it will also become a hub for digital innovation, a place where past and future intersect. It will be a hybrid heritage site catering to both the desire for authentic historical presence and the demand for immersive digital experiences. But as physical sites become increasingly enhanced by digital layers, how do we prevent the original historical essence from being obscured? What is the limit before an enhancement becomes a complete transformation? And if the digital version is almost indistinguishable from the real, what is the ultimate value of the physical visit? Number 7. How will Elvis's image and brand be managed in an era of infinite reproduction? Elvis's image is one of the most recognizable in the world. It's on everything from t-shirts to coffee mugs. But in an age of AI-generated content, deepfakes, and instant digital reproduction, how do you control such a pervasive brand? This was the central question of The Proliferating King Managing Elvis's IP in the Decentralized Digital Age, a critical legal and economic analysis published in 2033 by the Digital Rights and Futures Consortium. Professor Marcus Thorne, a specialist in intellectual property law, was the lead author. Thorne's paper laid out the monumental challenges faced by Elvis Presley Enterprises, EPE, and his estate by 2035. While EPE has historically been very effective in protecting Elvis's image and likeness, the sheer volume of AI-generated content makes traditional enforcement nearly impossible. The paper detailed the rise of micro-infringements. These are small-scale, often individual uses of AI to create Elvis-like images, voices, or short video clips that are then shared on social media or in niche metaverse communities. Each one individually might seem minor, but collectively they represent an uncontrolled explosion of Elvis-related content. The study explored several strategies being adopted. One is a shift from aggressive enforcement to strategic licensing and co-option. Instead of fighting every deepfake, EPE is increasingly licensing Elvis's digital assets to approved creators and platforms. This allows for controlled, high-quality new content that meets the estate's standards, while also generating revenue. An example cited was the official Elvis AI Remix Lab, launched in 2032, where musicians could license Elvis's vocal tracks for new compositions, with a portion of the royalties going to the estate. This provides a legitimate outlet for creative use. Another strategy discussed was the use of advanced blockchain technology for digital asset management. By 2035, many official Elvis digital assets ever, from virtual costumes to AI models of his voice, are tokenized as NFTs, non-fungible tokens. This provides an immutable record of ownership and provenance, making it easier to track official content and distinguish it from unauthorized reproductions. Thorne noted that while this doesn't stop deepfakes, it provides a clear marker for authenticated Elvis experiences. Thorne's research also highlighted a growing debate within the fan community and legal circles: the right to historical memory. Some argue that once a figure becomes a global icon, their image and persona enter the public domain of cultural memory to be freely interpreted and used. Others, particularly estates, argue for perpetual intellectual property rights. The paper predicted ongoing legal battles well beyond 2035, especially as technology blurs the lines between homage, parody, and direct infringement. The report also touched on the economic impact of fan-generated content. While unauthorized, many fan creations actually boost interest in Elvis, acting as a form of free marketing. EPE faces a delicate balance: how to protect the brand without alienating the very fans who keep the legacy alive. The paper suggested a future where intellectual property rights become increasingly granular, allowing for different levels of usage based on commercial intent and creative transformation. But if a brand becomes infinitely reproducible, does it lose its distinctiveness? How do we balance creator rights with the public's right to cultural expression? And who ultimately controls the narrative of a global icon when anyone can generate a new version? Number 6. How will Elvis's personal story and perceived authenticity evolve? Where Elvis's life was full of contradictions. He was a rebel and a mama's boy, a secular singer who loved gospel, a global star who yearned for a normal life. By 2035, with so much information, misinformation, and interpretation floating around, how will his personal story hold up? Dr. Chloe Dubois, a cultural historian from the Digital Archives and Memory Lab, addressed this in her 2032 paper, The Malleable Man Elvis in the Age of Hyperdocumentation and Post-Truth. She argued that Elvis's personal narrative is becoming increasingly complex. Dubois' research explored how new digital archives and AI-powered biographical tools are revealing previously obscure details about Elvis's life. By analyzing thousands of letters, interviews, and historical records, AI can now draw connections and patterns that human biographers might have missed. This can lead to a more nuanced understanding of his psychology and motivations. For example, a 2031 AI analysis of his private correspondence reportedly uncovered a subtle but consistent pattern of philosophical reflection in his later years, challenging the popular image of him as simply a pleasure seeker. However, Dubois also pointed out the significant danger of post-truth narratives. With the ability to deepfake audio and video, and to generate convincing but fabricated documents, it becomes increasingly difficult for the average person to discern fact from fiction. Her paper cited a concerning trend: the rise of elaborate AI-generated conspiracy theories about Elvis, some claiming he faked his death, others positing entirely new secret lives for him. These narratives, often presented with highly convincing deepfake evidence, gain traction in niche online communities. This means that by 2035, the true Elvis story is not a single, universally accepted narrative. It is a mosaic of verified facts, expert interpretations, fan theories, and outright fabrications. But Dubois argued that for younger generations, who are accustomed to fluid digital identities and alternative facts, the line between these categories might be less clear. They might consume a deepfake documentary about a hypothetical Elvis in space, not as literal truth, but as another valid version of his story. The research also looked at how traditional gatekeepers of his story, like biographers and historians, are adapting. Many are now collaborating with AI specialists to verify sources and to present comprehensive, multi-layered narratives that address the complexities. The goal is not just to present facts, but to teach critical thinking skills for navigating the digital landscape of biographical information. The Elvis Fact Check Project, a crowdsourced and AI-assisted initiative launched in 2034, aims to combat misinformation by providing verified data points for every aspect of his life. Dubois concluded that Elvis's personal story, far from becoming simpler, will become richer, more complex, and more contested. It will be a constant negotiation between historical evidence and speculative imagination. And the concept of authenticity will itself be redefined in this process. But if personal history can be so easily manipulated and reimagined, what does that do to the idea of a fixed identity? Will we ever truly know the real Elvis, or only an evolving consensus of narratives? And if people believe a deepfake story more than verified facts, what are the implications for historical truth? Number 5, will Elvis's cultural impact shift from global icon to niche phenomenon? Elvis was a global icon. His music and image transcended borders, but as global culture becomes increasingly fragmented and personalized, will his broad appeal diminish? Will he become more of a specialist interest? This was the core question of From Global King to Subculture Sovereign, the Niche-ification of Elvis in 2035, a demographic and cultural trend analysis published in 2033 by the Institute for Global Cultural Flows. Dr. Omar Hassan, a cultural anthropologist, led the study. Hassan's paper acknowledged Elvis's enduring presence but posited a subtle shift. While his image and a few of his major hits remain widely recognized globally, deeper engagement is becoming more concentrated within specific demographics and subcultures. For example, the paper noted a strong and growing rockabilly revival movement in Japan, France, and parts of Latin America. This subculture deeply reveres Elvis's early work and style, often adopting his fashion and dance moves. Here, Elvis is not just popular, he is a foundational figure, almost a deity. However, outside these specific niches, interest might be less intense. Hassan observed that in many mainstream global youth cultures, while Elvis is recognized as important history, he isn't necessarily a primary source of current entertainment or inspiration. He is a historical reference point, but not a daily listen. This contrasts with his peak global fame, where he was a universal phenomenon. The study suggested that this isn't a decline in importance, but a change in mode of engagement. He moves from being a universally consumed product to a deeply revered specialist subject. The research also highlighted the role of technology in facilitating these niche communities. Online forums, metaverse groups, and AI-powered recommendation systems connect fans with very specific interests in Elvis. For instance, a group dedicated solely to analyzing his vocal techniques, or another focused on his movie costumes. These groups, though smaller in number, exhibit extremely high levels of engagement and knowledge. They are actively creating new content, theories, and interpretations. Hassan's paper also touched on the impact of local cultural contexts. In some countries, Elvis's image has been reappropriated and blended with local traditions. The paper cited an example from a 2030 cultural festival in Brazil, where an Elvis impersonator performed his songs with samba rhythms, creating a unique fusion that was hugely popular locally. This demonstrates how global icons are localized and reinterpreted, making them relevant to specific audiences, even if their universal appeal broadens in a fragmented way. The conclusion was that Elvis won't disappear from the global stage, but his presence will be less uniform. He will be a towering figure for passionate, dedicated communities, while for the broader populace, he will remain a recognized historical reference, perhaps revisited through key cultural touchstones. He'll be more like Shakespeare or Mozart, universally known, but deeply explored by those with a specific interest. But if cultural icons become increasingly niche, What does that mean for a shared global cultural identity? Will future generations lose a common set of cultural references? And what is the difference between a global icon and a universally recognized historical figure? Number 4. How will Elvis's influence on fashion and style persist or transform? Elvis was a style icon. His pompadour, his flashy jumpsuits, his casual cool, they defined eras. But fashion is always changing. How will his sartorial legacy look in 2035? A dedicated report, The King of Threads Elvis's Enduring Influence on 21st Century Fashion, was released in 2034 by the Global Fashion Foresight Institute. Authored by fashion historian and trend analyst Dr. Isabella Rossi, the paper provided a detailed look at his impact. Rossi's research found that Elvis's direct aesthetic influence has fragmented. You don't see widespread adoption of his exact jumpsuits in everyday wear anymore, for instance. But his principles of style and specific iconic elements continue to resurface and inspire. The paper identified several key trends. One is the Elvis silhouette. The tailored, often high-waisted trousers, the fitted shirts, the broader shoulders. These elements are subtly reinterpreted in contemporary menswear collections. Designers aren't copying, they are drawing inspiration from the underlying structure of his look. Another major area of influence is the concept of performance wear. Elvis's jumpsuits were designed for the stage. They were bold, elaborate, and instantly recognizable. Rossi argued that this concept directly influenced modern celebrity fashion, where artists use clothing as a crucial part of their stage persona. She cited examples of 21st century pop stars whose elaborate concert outfits, while not directly Elvis-esque, share the same spirit of theatricality and bold statement. The report also detailed the role of AI in fashion design inspired by Elvis. By 2035, AI tools can generate thousands of new garment designs based on specific historical influences. Designers are using Elvis-inspired prompts to create fresh collections. For example, an AI might generate a modern streetwear collection that subtly incorporates the color palettes or embroidery patterns from his stage outfits without being a direct copy. This allows for constant, subtle reincarnation of his aesthetic. Rossi's study also touched on the role of nostalgia cycles. Every few decades, there's a resurgence of interest in specific past eras. The 1950s and 1970s, key periods for Elvis's style, frequently re-enter the fashion discourse. When they do, Elvis often becomes a central reference point. His image in these cycles serves as a powerful shorthand for the mood and aesthetic of those times. For example, a 2032 retro futuristic collection drew heavily on the exaggerated collars and wide lapels of his 1970s suits, but rendered them in metallic, holographic fabrics. The paper concluded that Elvis's fashion legacy isn't about specific garments enduring unchanged. It's about his foundational role in establishing certain aesthetics and approaches to celebrity style. He taught the world how a performer could use clothing to amplify their persona, and that lesson continues to resonate. His spirit of bold individuality and daring has a lasting impact, but if fashion moves so quickly, will Elvis's style ever be more than a fleeting inspiration? Can specific fashion elements retain their original meaning when constantly recontextualized? And what happens if future generations interpret his style in ways completely alien to his original intent? Number 3. What new forms of Elvis fandom will emerge by 2035? Fandom isn't just about collecting records anymore, it's an active participatory culture. What will the Elvis fan look like by his centennial? This was the focus of the Evolving Devotion Typologies of Elvis Fandom in the Digital Age, a socio-cultural study published in 2032 by the Fan Studies Research Collective. Dr. David Chen, a specialist in digital communities, authored the paper. Chen's research identified several new and evolving forms of Elvis fandom. First, the meta-fans. These are individuals whose primary engagement with Elvis happens within virtual worlds. They attend metaverse concerts, collect Elvis NFTs, and participate in virtual role-playing communities where they embody characters from his life or perform as virtual Elvises themselves. For these fans, the digital experience is often more central than physical memorabilia or traditional media. Second, the AI collaborators. These are fans, often artists or musicians, who actively use AI tools to create new Elvis-inspired content. They might feed Elvis's vocal stems into an AI to generate entirely new musical compositions, or use deepfake software to create short films starring an AI Elvis. They view their fandom as a creative partnership with the legacy, not just passive consumption. And Chen noted that this blurring of lines between fan and creator is a significant development. Third, the heritage advocates. These are fans who are deeply invested in the historical preservation and accurate representation of Elvis's legacy. They often use digital tools like archival software and fact-checking platforms to combat misinformation and to ensure that his true story is told. They are the digital custodians meticulously curating and verifying content related to Elvis. This group often overlaps with traditional fan clubs but uses modern methods. The study also highlighted the global nature of these new fandoms. Online communities transcend geographical boundaries. A metafan in Brazil might collaborate on an AI project with an AI collaborator in South Korea, sharing a common passion for Elvis despite vast cultural differences. Chen emphasized that language barriers are often overcome through translation tools and a shared visual culture surrounding Elvis. Chen's paper also touched on the economic aspects of these new fandoms. The rise of creator economies means that some fans are generating income directly from their Elvis-inspired creations, whether through selling NFTs of their AI art or monetizing their metaverse performances. This creates a feedback loop where fandom isn't just a leisure activity, but also a potential source of livelihood. The conclusion was that Elvis fandom is becoming more diverse, more active, and more technologically integrated. It's not a monolithic group, but a vibrant ecosystem of different approaches to devotion. The passionate engagement remains, but the forms it takes are constantly evolving, driven by innovation and new digital spaces. But if fandom becomes so personalized and fractured, will there still be a shared sense of community? Does the digital creation of new content dilute the reverence for the original works? And what happens when the distinction between a fan and a professional creator completely disappears? Number 2, how will Elvis's impact on music composition and performance evolve? Elvis changed music, his style, his voice, his stage presence. It was revolutionary. But by 2035, with music creation increasingly driven by AI, how will his fundamental impact on how music is made and performed continue? The algorithmic King Elvis's enduring influence on generative music and performance. A groundbreaking study by the Institute for Computational Musicology was published in 2034. Dr. Jeremy Wu, a pioneer in AI music, was the lead author. Wu's paper detailed several ways Elvis's legacy is impacting music composition and performance. Firstly, through style transfer AI. This technology can take the stylistic elements of Elvis's music, his vocal inflections, chord progressions, rhythmic patterns, and apply them to entirely new compositions. By 2035, musicians regularly use AI tools that can generate a new Elvis-sounding melody or a guitar riff that feels authentically his, even if he never played it. This isn't just sampling, it's deep integration of his musical DNA into new works. Secondly, the study examined the performance simulation aspect. AI models trained on Elvis's vast performance archive can generate new movements, gestures, and stage interactions that are consistent with his unique style. Wu cited examples of contemporary performers who use these AI-generated movements as inspiration, or even integrate them directly into their own virtual performances. The ghost of his stage presence is digitally teaching new artists. One example is a popular virtual pop idol in 2033 who openly credited an Elvis performance AI for helping craft their unique stage choreography. Thirdly, the research explored the creation of synthetic Elvis music. These are entirely new songs, often with AI-generated lyrics and melodies, that are performed by an AI-generated Elvis voice. While commercially sensitive and often controversial, these projects are pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Wu discussed the Project Sun Redux, a 2032 initiative that used AI to create a hypothetical lost album of Elvis songs, imagined if he had continued recording with Sun Records in a different timeline. The album received critical attention, sparking debates about authorship and authenticity. Wu's paper also delved into the ethical implications. Who gets credit for an AI-generated Elvis song? Is it the original Elvis, the human who coded the AI, or the AI itself? These questions are still largely unresolved by 2035. The study highlighted the need for new legal and ethical frameworks to govern creative works generated through complex human-AI collaboration, especially when dealing with deceased artists. The conclusion was that Elvis's musical impact is moving beyond direct influence into a generative one. He is not just inspiring artists, he is becoming a co-creator through AI. His musical essence is being reassembled and recontextualized in ways that continue to push the boundaries of creativity. This ensures his place not just as a historical musician, but as a foundational element in the future of music production. But if AI can perfectly mimic an artist's style and create new works, does that reduce the value of human originality? What happens to the concept of authorship when a machine can emulate a genius? And if an AI Elvis can sing any new song, what does that mean for the human voice and its unique emotional resonance? Number one, will Elvis still be considered relevant by the mid-21st century? This is the ultimate question. By 2035, will Elvis Presley, born a full century prior, still hold genuine relevance, or will he be a mere curiosity? The capstone study in this series of Futurology papers, The Echo Chamber of History, Elvis's Perpetual Presence in the Mid-21st Century, was published by the Global Foresight Council in late 2034. Dr. Vivian Lee, a sociologist specializing in cultural endurance, provided the overarching analysis. Lee's paper argued forcefully that Elvis will not only remain relevant, but that his relevance will continue to evolve. She introduced the concept of adaptive cultural icons. These are figures who possess certain intrinsic qualities that allow them to be continuously reinterpreted and resonate across vastly different cultural contexts and technological landscapes. Elvis, she argued, is a prime example. His youth, his rebellion, his charisma, his voice, and his raw talent are timeless qualities that transcend specific trends. The study identified several vectors of sustained relevance. One is his role as a historical anchor. For many, Elvis represents a pivotal moment in the 20th century, the birth of rock and roll, the rise of mass media, and a shift in youth culture. He is a reference point for understanding the social and cultural changes of the last 100 years. As historians and educators in 2035 increasingly use immersive virtual reality and AI-powered learning tools, Elvis often serves as an engaging entry point into past eras. Another vector is his sheer adaptability to new media. Unlike some older icons who struggle to translate into digital forms, Elvis's dynamic visual presence and distinctive sound make him ideal for virtual concerts, deepfake narratives, and AI-generated content. He is a plug-and-play icon for the digital age, easily integrated into new platforms without losing his core appeal. Lee cited a 2033 metaverse educational program that used an AI Elvis to teach students about American history and the civil rights movement, showing how his story can be leveraged for diverse educational purposes. The paper also looked at cultural memory algorithms. By 2035, AI systems are constantly analyzing vast amounts of data to predict cultural resonance. They identify patterns in what keeps historical figures alive in the public consciousness. Elvis consistently ranks high in these analyses, not just for his music, but for his broad cultural impact across fashion, identity, and media. These algorithms often surface Elvis content to new generations, ensuring his ongoing visibility. Lee acknowledged that relevance might not always mean direct, daily consumption. It can mean being a constant, if sometimes background presence. He is the watermark on the culture. Right? He is the foundational beat in the rhythm of modern entertainment. And crucially, she argued that the very debates about digital immortality, authenticity, and IP rights that surround Elvis contribute to his relevance. He is at the center of cutting-edge cultural, ethical, and legal discussions. He is not just an object of study, he is a living case study for the future. The conclusion was clear. Elvis Presley will not fade into obscurity by his centennial. He will continue to be a dynamic, evolving force in global culture, adapting to new technologies, inspiring new forms of creativity, and serving as a touchstone for understanding our collective past and future. His legacy is not just preserved, it is perpetually regenerated. But if relevance is constantly redefined by technology and algorithms, what is the core, immutable essence of a person's legacy? Will future generations lose the ability to appreciate an icon without digital intervention? And if an icon's life is perpetually extended through AI, does death itself lose some of its meaning for cultural figures?